It's kind of striking, isn't it, how much our online lives seem to revolve around these, well, these perfectly staged food diaries.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone's showcasing their clean eating journey.
Yeah, and it started off simply enough, didn't it? Just, wanting to make healthier choices, maybe eat more
Or it's
vegetables.
basic stuff.
But somewhere along the line, it feels like it's morphed into
Yeah.
this whole performance. Like it's a way we signal something about ourselves, our virtue or something.
It's really fascinating, this shift, how basic sustenance, just eating, has become loaded with all this moral weight. So much meaning packed into every bite.
Totally. I mean, I think of someone like, well, let's call her Sarah. Her social media. It's just a constant stream of virtuous eating. The almond milk, the kale salads, the endless parade of things that are gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, perfect, hashtag clean eating journey, hashtag healthy mind, healthy body, the whole 9 yards.
Right. And from the outside, looking at that feed, you'd think she has it all figured out. Complete control.
Exactly. But, like, the perfectly presented facade, that's often where the most interesting stuff is hidden, isn't it?
Always. What's going on behind the scenes?
Well, the reality is this really tight web of rules she's made for herself. Meticulous weighing of every single portion.
Wow.
Feeling intense guilt after eating just one thing that's off plan. Spending hours like really scrutinizing nutritional labels as if she's cracking some ancient code.
That sounds exhausting.
It does. And it makes you wonder, is this really about wellness anymore? Or is something else driving this?
Well, this intense focus, this preoccupation with food purity, it really does raise deeper questions about our modern anxieties.
Okay.
Maybe if we look at it through, say, a Freudian lens, perhaps this obsession with diet is acting as a kind of stand-in, a displacement for other tensions in our lives that feel less manageable.
Okay, let's unpack that a little because, on the surface, clean eating is really appealing. It's undeniable.
It is.
It taps into this really basic human desire for order, right? For something that feels pure in what often feels like a pretty messy world.
Clean versus dirty, good versus bad.
Exactly. It's such a stark, simple, and kind of seductive binary. And it's not just food, is it? We see it pop up everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Like where?
Like those detox teas promising to cleanse you from the inside out. Or the whole decluttering craze, purify your home. Even digital detoxes, scrubbing our online lives clean.
Huh, good point.
It's like food has just become the latest battleground.
Yeah.
Where we try to exert some control, maybe define ourselves, prove our worth.
Precisely. Food, in this kind of context, it really moves beyond just simple nourishment. It becomes a stage, doesn't it? A stage for playing out these dramas around control, identity, self-worth.
Yeah.
But what's really intriguing is why. Why does this very specific type of rigid structure hold such power, such appeal right now?
So this compulsion almost to create all these strict rules around something as fundamental as eating, where do you think that comes from, psychoanalytically speaking?
Well, Freud might suggest it comes from a really deep-seated human need, a need to manage the basic uncertainty of existence.
Okay.
When the world feels chaotic, unpredictable, maybe exerting control over our own bodies, specifically what goes into them, gives us this powerful feeling of mastery, even if it's maybe illusory.
Right. It's like the big picture is overwhelming, climate change, politics, whatever. But hey, at least I decided on the almond butter instead of the peanut butter today. I controlled that.
On a small scale, yes, exactly. That seemingly tiny choice can feel like a temporary shield against, deeper anxieties about our place in the world, existential dread even.
Yeah.
But like you said with the Sarah example, this quest for control, it can come at a really high price. It risks turning the very act of nourishment into a source of stress, anxiety, limitation.
And the irony. It's almost funny, isn't it? You've got all these wellness influencers constantly talking about nourishing your body and loving yourself through food.
That language of self-care.
Right. But then, in the next breath, they're labeling entire food groups as toxic or inflammatory or just plain bad. It feels less like actual self-care and more like, self-punishment wrapped up in pretty trendy packaging.
The language we use around food is incredibly revealing, you're right. When you brand foods as inherently bad, it automatically cultivates feelings of shame, guilt, failure around eating them.
Yeah.
And this kind of black and white thinking, where foods are either totally good or completely evil, it mirrors what psychologists often call a cognitive distortion. It's a thought pattern that just isn't based on a balanced view of reality.
And what's really disturbing, I think, is how readily society seems to accept this particular distortion.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike, say, more recognized eating disorders, which thankfully are being treated with more seriousness now, this clean eating thing often gets a total pass. Sometimes it's even praised.
Oh, absolutely. People get complimented on their discipline, their dedication to health.
Exactly. Even when it's clearly tipping over into obsession. And that just sets up this really dangerous cycle, doesn't it? The more restrictive you are, maybe the more praise you get, which just makes it even harder to see it or break free.
That societal endorsement, that applause, it creates a genuine challenge. That positive reinforcement can completely mask the underlying issues.
Yeah.
It makes it hard for the person and even the people around them to recognize when, healthy intentions have actually morphed into unhealthy fixations.
It also fits so neatly into our broader cultural obsessions, right?
Mm.
Like productivity culture, life hacks,
Yeah.
the constant drive for self-optimization.
Treating ourselves like machines to be fine-tuned.
Yes, we're constantly trying to tweak ourselves, and clean eating becomes just another metric, another way to reduce ourselves to these functional components: calories counted, macros balanced, antioxidants maximized.
Yeah.
And we completely overlook the joy, the social connection, the sheer pleasure that food is supposed to bring.
This relentless drive for optimization, it reflects this desire for a kind of engineered perfection, which, if you look at it from a Freudian angle, fundamentally misunderstands the messy, complex nature of being human.
Right.
Because beneath that shiny surface of efficiency and control lie all the inconvenient realities, our desires, our fears, our inherent contradictions, all the stuff Freud was interested in.
So maybe the next time we're standing in the supermarket aisle, agonizing over a food choice, we're feeling that pang of guilt about something we ate. Maybe the real question isn't just, is this clean?
What else could it be?
Maybe something deeper. Like, what are we truly craving in that moment? Is it nutrition? Or is it acceptance, control,
Yeah.
comfort, maybe something much more fundamental?
Precisely, that pursuit of clean might offer this illusion of purity, this feeling of being good, but ultimately it could just be a way of avoiding a confrontation with more basic, perhaps uncomfortable human needs and anxiety. True well-being, as Freud might have put it, probably lies not in eliminating every single imperfection, but in our capacity to actually accept them, to live with the messiness.
Which brings us to thinking about the less obvious, maybe even the more unsettling sides of this whole clean eating phenomenon.
Yeah.
If we were to really put on our Freudian glasses and look at all those beautifully plated meals online, what might we really be seeing?
Well then we'd likely see a very rich tapestry, a whole lot of unconscious motivations being played out right there on the plate or the screen.
Okay.
Psychoanalytically speaking, that intense focus on clean eating becomes less about the conscious health decisions people think they're making,
Right.
and much more about the hidden dramas of our inner lives, the things we're not consciously aware of.
Okay, so if we sort of peel back the layers of the organic kale salad,
Mhm.
what's hiding underneath?
Well, one really key concept here is something psychoanalysis calls displacement.
Displacement, okay?
Yeah. So when we feel overwhelmed by, the big complexities of life, work stress, relationship issues, just the sheer weight of modern existence.
Which is a lot.
It is. Our anxieties can sort of detach themselves from the real source and latch onto a more manageable target, something concrete.
Like food.
Like food. Controlling exactly what you eat down to the last gram can offer this really tangible sense of power in a world that often feels completely beyond our control.
Mm.
To put it simply, maybe think of it like this. When life feels too much, your anxiety looks for something, anything you can control. And for many people now, that becomes their diet.
So my worries about my job performance or, I don't know, my relationship conflict, you get sort of unconsciously shifted onto whether I should have the quinoa or the brown rice?
In essence, yes, that endless internal debate about whole wheat versus white bread might be less about the actual fiber content.
Which is what we tell ourselves.
Yeah, right. And more about creating some small semblance of order in your life when everything else feels chaotic. The meticulous control over diet serves as this symbolic way of managing deeper, less controllable anxieties.
Wow.
Freud might even say that the very rigidity, the strictness of the clean eating rules themselves functions as a kind of defense mechanism, a defense against a more fundamental unease about life.
And what about that almost religious quality it sometimes takes on? Certain foods are elevated to this saintly status, they're pure, while others are demonized, they're toxic, inflammatory, evil.
Yes, that idealization and vilification. It's fascinating. It can be understood through the lens of our more primal urges. Freud used the term libido, not just for sex drive, but for our basic life energy, our desires, our drives.
Yeah.
So the intense focus on certain pure foods, even the almost sensual way they're sometimes photographed and described, and the equally intense aversion to forbidden foods. This could represent a way our unconscious mind channels and manages these powerful libidinal energies in a way that feels socially acceptable, even virtuous.
So wait, that Instagram influencer lovingly arranging their organic berries for the perfect shot.
Yeah.
That's potentially a manifestation of repressed desires. That
Yeah.
seems like a stretch.
Well, perhaps not the act itself directly, but the intensity of the focus, the almost reverent language that sometimes use nourish your temple, fuel your body, that could be interpreted as a channeling, a sublimation of more direct instinctual drives into this very specific realm of diet and health.
Sublimation, turning impulses into something acceptable.
Exactly. And that quasi-religious language we often hear, most, bodies as temples, indulgent foods as sins, cheat days needing penance at the gym. It really supports this idea of transformed, displaced desires.
Okay, and then there's the whole performance of it all, especially on social media.
Yeah.
Every single flawlessly presented meal,
Yeah.
every sweaty post-workout selfie, it all feels so incredibly curated.
Oh, social media acts as a massive amplifier for these unconscious dynamics. Each post becomes a projection, an attempt to craft and manage our self-image, both for ourselves and, crucially, for others.
Yeah.
Freud might look at platforms like Instagram as a kind of collective dream space, a place where our unconscious wishes, our anxieties, our fantasies are played out very publicly, often without us even realizing it. So those idealized images of perfect health and wellness, they can be seen as compensatory, a way of masking underlying insecurities, feelings of inadequacy, maybe inner turmoil.
It's like everyone's desperately trying to project this perfect, clean version of themselves online. And maybe the cleaner and more perfect the online image,
Yeah.
the more, complicated things might actually be underneath.
That's often the case, isn't it? And this tendency to project, it spills over into how we relate to other people, too. I mean, have you ever caught yourself silently judging someone else's food choices? Like in the office canteen or at a restaurant?
Yeah. More often than I'd probably like to admit, actually.
Well, Freud would likely suggest that this judgment frequently stems from our own internal conflicts, our own unresolved stuff.
So?
By projecting our own forbidden desires, the things we secretly want but deny ourselves onto others, and then criticizing them for indulging, we temporarily relieve our own sense of guilt or tension. It's a subconscious way of saying, phew, at least I'm not the one eating that greasy burger, I'm still good.
It contributes to this whole culture of constant dietary surveillance and judgment.
That's a bit unsettling. So that little internal eye roll I might have when someone orders the pizza,
Yeah.
it might actually be about my own secret pizza cravings.
It certainly can be a manifestation of that kind of projection, yes.
Yeah.
And then, tied into that, there's often an element of aggression.
Aggression in
Yeah.
clean eating. Think about the language we commonly use around exercise and food, things we just say without thinking, burning off those calories, punishing ourselves with a hard workout after an indulgence. It's actually quite violent language when you stop and listen to it.
Wow, you're right. I never really thought about it that way, but that language is so ingrained, we hardly even notice it. Got to burn this off.
Exactly. Freud theorized that society, civilization, requires us to suppress or redirect our more primal aggressive instincts. They don't just disappear, they find other, more indirect outlets.
Okay.
And in the context of extreme dieting or clean eating, this aggression can get turned inward, directed against our own bodies. The desire to burn, punish, deprive, restrict it can be seen as a subtle, socially sanctioned form of self-hostility, cleverly disguised as self-care or discipline.
Man, it's like this constant internal battle, isn't it? But dressed up as a peaceful journey to wellness. And sometimes, in really extreme cases, it almost feels like this relentless pursuit of ultimate health can become profoundly unhealthy. Like it backfires.
This brings us right to Freud's fascinating concepts of eros and thanatos. Eros is the life drive, the instinct towards survival, connection, creation, health.
Okay, the positive force.
Right. And thanatos is, often translated as the death drive, but maybe think of it as an unconscious pull towards rest, cessation, dismantling, maybe even destruction, a kind of unwinding. Now, clean eating ostensibly aligns with eros, preserving life, promoting health. But its extreme forms, the obsessive restriction, the self-punishment, they can paradoxically start to veer towards thanatos, a kind of self-destructive tendency hidden within the pursuit of health.
So the boundary between nourishing your body and actually denying or harming it can become really, really blurred.
Dangerously blurred, yes. That obsession with the perfect diet could, in some cases, actually be the opposite of life-affirming.
And we also need to think about the social part of it, right? You mentioned identity earlier.
Yes, absolutely. In a world where many of the big traditional markers of identity, like maybe job for life, religion, stable communities, feel less solid, less certain,
Yeah, things feel unstable.
we often latch onto these smaller distinctions. Things we can control, things we can define ourselves by, to create a sense of belonging, or maybe even a sense of superiority.
Like dietary labels. I'm gluten-free, I'm vegan, I'm keto.
Exactly. It's like forming these little mini tribes based purely on dietary choices. Freud actually talked about something called the narcissism of small differences.
The narcissism of small differences. I like that.
It's this idea that we tend to emphasize and fixate on tiny, minor differences between ourselves and others, especially those closest to us, to shore up our own sense of identity, to create an us versus them.
Even if the difference is just, almond milk versus oat milk.
Precisely. We fixate on these dietary variations to feel special, unique, maybe even morally superior. I make the right choices, even if, ironically, this constant striving for dietary distinction actually ends up making us feel more separate, more isolated.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So ultimately, if you look through this Freudian lens, clean eating reveals itself to be about so much more than just the food on our plates. It really reflects our deepest fears, our hidden desires, our anxieties, and that ongoing, very human struggle to find some kind of balance between chaos and control.
Which really makes you wonder,
Yeah.
okay, what is the discomfort we're really trying to avoid with all this?
Yeah.
What are we so desperately trying to outrun or maybe purify with all this clean living?
That is the absolute core question, isn't it? If we think about clean eating not just individually, but as a cultural symptom, it might point to a larger difficulty in our society, a difficulty in simply sitting with discomfort, with ambiguity, with imperfection.
Yeah.
Labeling foods, and by extension maybe ourselves and others, as clean or dirty, good or bad, it establishes this very rigid moralistic framework. And that encourages judgment, comparison, anxiety. And maybe it ultimately serves as an elaborate attempt to bypass the inherent messiness, the complexity of just being human.
It's almost like we're trying to scrub away not just, pesticides or processed ingredients, but emotional impurities too.
Mm-hmm.
All that language around toxins and inflammation, it almost sounds like we're projecting our unwanted feelings, our anxieties, our bad thoughts onto the food itself.
The language is definitely suggestive, isn't it? It points towards a fear of emotional contamination being mapped onto the physical body, onto food. Those terms, toxins, detox, inflammation, they often carry this heavy symbolic weight. They represent anxieties, negative emotions, maybe past traumas that we find hard to process or even acknowledge directly. So we locate the problem in the gluten or the sugar.
But the central irony just keeps coming back, doesn't it? All this monumental effort to control food.
Yes.
And yet, ultimately, it seems like the food, or the rules about the food, end up controlling us. The rigidity it creates, the social isolation, the constant mental energy it takes up.
Absolutely.
And then, inevitably, those moments happen when the forbidden thing makes a reappearance. The slip-up, the binge.
Well, the tighter we try to grip something, the more forcefully it can sometimes spring back. What Freud famously called the return of the repressed. It means those denied impulses, those forbidden desires, they don't just vanish. They often find ways to resurface, sometimes in unexpected, maybe even self-sabotaging ways. So the relentless pursuit of absolute control over eating can paradoxically lead to a profound loss of freedom, a feeling of being trapped.
And you see glimpses of this contradiction all the time in the wellness world, don't you? The perfectly curated Instagram feed right alongside whispers of secret eating or disordered patterns, the relentless public positivity that seems to mask private struggles. It's kind of a constant, if uncomfortable, reminder that we're all just imperfect human.
These contradictions are inherently human. The attempt to present a completely flawless, controlled exterior often crumbles under the weight of our natural complexities, our desires, our vulnerabilities. Perfection, in that absolute airbrush sense, it remains an elusive and maybe ultimately an undesirable goal.
And clean eating just slots so neatly into this modern performance culture, doesn't it? It's become such an easy, visible way to signal virtue, to show you're disciplined, you're healthy, you're good, and it gets amplified like crazy by the echo chamber of social media.
It does.
But does it ever feel like in focusing so much on crafting that image, we're maybe losing touch with our actual authentic selves in the process.
That's a real risk. The performative aspect of clean eating, especially when it's lived out online, can absolutely contribute to a fragmented sense of self. The carefully constructed image, the personal brand, can start to take precedence over genuine internal experience. It becomes just another way we seek external validation, another way to measure our worth by likes and comments.
It really feels like it's all part of this bigger cultural story we keep telling ourselves, doesn't it? This narrative that equates like personal worth with productivity, or physical beauty with moral goodness, or achieving perfect health with guaranteed happiness.
Yes, that's a powerful narrative.
And maybe it's just such a massive distraction. A way to avoid asking the deeper, harder questions about what truly nourishes us, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. How do we find meaning in our imperfections, not despite them? How can we learn to practice genuine, unconditional self-acceptance?
That cultural narrative, as you put it, it can function as a kind of collective defense mechanism, maybe, shielding us, perhaps, from confronting those more profound, maybe more uncomfortable questions about our core values, our fears, our authentic sense of self.
So maybe as we're scrolling through those feeds, inevitably comparing our own messy, complicated lives to everyone else's seemingly perfect, clean ones, maybe the real work isn't about finding the ultimate green smoothie recipe.
What is it then?
Maybe it's about trying to look beyond the surface, asking ourselves honestly what's truly driving our choices around food, around health, around how we present ourselves. Is it genuine care for our well-being, or is it avoidance of something else? Is it about seeking freedom or imposing control? Is it about progress, or is it projection?
The answers, as Freud would certainly guide us to consider, often lie not in the obvious conscious reasons we give ourselves, but in the unseen motivations, the unconscious currents that shape our behavior. It's usually in acknowledging the very discomfort we might be desperately trying to avoid. That's where true understanding often begins.
It really leaves you with this kind of unsettling final thought, doesn't it? That even the most pristine, perfectly arranged, cleanest plate of food can act as a mirror, reflecting back not just what we choose to eat, but who we are, what we fear, and maybe most revealingly, who we are trying so hard not to be.